folks. Yes, sir.
Probably not a good idea to start with a depressed song.
Well, I mean, yes. Hi! How's that? It's just sort of looking at, dumping the Coke on the laptop. It's like, all right, omens. In any case, welcome. Thanks for coming. One announcement that the gentleman in the control room asked for was if you have cell phones, can you kill them simply because they mess with the overhead. We basically get a low-grade buzz going on during the discussion. Well,
no more Coke.
No more Coke. Keep them on. Enjoy your low-grade buzz. All right. Yeah. What else can go wrong? I'll get a phone call from the wife saying, okay. In any case, I'm very glad you could make it. I'm having an excellent day so far. How about you? Let me go ahead and move forward before I screw myself in some other fashion here. Anyway, day one. Day one, and actually both day one and day two here with regards to the agenda were in many cases driven fairly heavily off of some of the comments that we got during the last board meeting. And so with that, obviously we've got a little bit of open discussion time here to chat about administrivia and things that have happened since the last meeting. We've been pretty liberal with the breaks on at least day one. Day two is going to get a little bit more dicey because of some of the scheduling things that we're having to do, but I'll discuss that in a minute. First up here in terms of actual content, the first discussion this morning is going to be Dan Schiappa and Paul England, who are going to be talking about the security strategy with specific regards to Windows. That is to say that we've heard a lot of discussion from a number of you on, okay, what are you doing? What do you consider, your future directions, and a variety of sort of contextual questions around those areas. And so, given that, Dan Schiappa will come in, and he's the GM of, or one of the GMs in the Security Business and Technology Unit, and he's bringing one of his architects, Paul England, who has discussed things like Inkscape and Hypervisor in the past, and we'll get into a little bit of architectural discussion at that point. Steve, do you have anything, contextually to add to what Dan and Paul are going to be focusing on?
I think Dan will give you an introduction to what they've been doing, the context, and I know he's going through, the picture of the architecture efforts as they stand. This is the objective of this effort is a security architecture for Microsoft. Okay, so the notion is, what's the overall picture? What are the components? What does the platform provide? How do we constrain groups to use good and common security technologies rather than sort of one-off or maybe not so good security technologies. Start that from the minutes. And this effort has mobilized a number of the key security folks across the company. Butler has been pretty much fully involved in it. Paul Leach, who you've met, has been pretty much full time on it. Carl Ellison, as well as some folks from Dan's team. So this is an important thing, and I think if the board looks at it, drills into it, and says either we like it or we like it but, or we don't like it, those are important things, and that will be a significant contribution. If you need to see more, tell them.
The one thing that we should mention here too it's my understanding, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is not a finished product, so it's not something.
Absolutely.
It's definitely something that would be ripe for discussion and/or feedback from the board. So if you see something that fails the New York Times sniff test, well, then by all means bring it up, because at some point, if it doesn't pass muster with you folks, that means it's not going to pass muster with someone else. So this is definitely a work in progress. We'll have another short break after Dan and Paul's session, and then one of the people that's in, I put the pre-reading out on the website for you. This is a Bill G. Think Week piece that is written by one of the folks that's in Scott's organization, Scott Charney's organization, and it focuses on what he's referring to as trustworthy assurance. So there's a lot of sort of process-driven and automation-type tasks that he would like to at least get some eyeballs on, both from the board perspective before he submits it up the line to Bill G. to make sure that at least the things that he has in mind. I mean, it's already gone through a few reasonable passes internally from folks, and there have been no bloody objections to it as far as I know. But he would definitely like to have some discussion and some thought on that, and he will be one of the short sessions today. So we have an opportunity to give some feedback with regards to that. We'll have another break around 2 o'clock. Then we will go into the InfoCard architecture discussion. Now, this is different than what Kim Cameron talked about last time. These are people that are close organizationally to Kim Cameron. However, this is much more on the side of the architecture, as opposed to last time. It was much more contextual and going through some of the types of thought processes and problems that we faced. In this case, it's going to be Stuart Kwan and Mike Jones talking specifically about some of the changes that have made since the last time Kim talked to you. And there's going to be a specific dive into some of the architectural details with regards to InfoCards and identity management writ large. That will take us to the end of the day. At 5:15, the bus to the Marriott will be back to take you back there. And then 7 o'clock, we have dinner at the Elk River Room inside the Marriott Hotel. So with that, questions, comments on day one? All right. Day two, from 8:30, we had to get, again, apologies for the earlier start, but we had to do some schedule magic here to make things fit. From 8:30 to 10:30, we got a little bit earlier start, but the behavioral ad serving strategy was something that, in the discussion between Peter and Scott and Steve and myself, was felt that definitely needed some time here at the board. Brian Arbogast is the corporate vice president and for this initiative, and who is looking at the means by which we will present our strategies and processes for behavioral ad serving online. Now, the other thing that we also asked him to be aware of as a result of the discussion last time was there was a lot of interest in MSN Search and the areas around MSN Search as well. So he will be, although it may not be actually in his presentation, he knows that you guys are interested in it. So if at the right point someone flips that question out to him, we'll then very definitely be prepared and ready to talk about what our MSN Search strategy is and how they're moving forward on that. We're going to have a hard stop at 10:30 after that because Jim Alchin is on a very tight timeline. For those of you that don't know who Jim Alchin is, he's the group vice president in charge of the Windows division. So basically, he's the one that calls the shots for Windows and a variety of other technologies. So Jim is going to come in and sort of answer the meta question that has been posed a number of times by a number of the board members, to talk about things like when it comes to security versus fill in the blank. And that could be features, it could be performance, it could be ship schedules or deadlines, it could be any of that kind of stuff. He's just going to come in and have sort of an open, off-the-cuff discussion with you folks. No PowerPoint-driven presentations or anything like that. So it's basically going to be 45 minutes of Q&A on that type of interaction. And it should give you a little bit more context into how we do things. And he'll be coming over and spending some time with us on that. After that, we will go into a little bit of an early break and grabbing some lunch, and then moving back into the Internet Explorer architecture session. Now, for those of you that remember the last session with Rob Franco, we definitely got the message that there was sort of a juxtaposition. A lot of folks thought it was good. A lot of folks wanted more information. So Steve and I went back to Rob this time and says, okay, what can we do to improve and make sure that we get the questions answered that were sort of left unasked or unanswered from the last session. So Rob will come in and he has that afternoon session to put a little bit more meat on the bone with regards to the architectural strategy around Internet Explorer. We will have a break after that. Then we go into closed session. We will go after that closed session to the usual report from the board and look for a 4:30 adjourn tomorrow. Now, with regards to the open discussion for today, I mean, I've sort of already hit on a lot of these things, but the context for the discussions, like I said, are in many cases early stage thinking or Bill G. Think Week fodder. There may be some follow-on opportunities for board feedback. I'm thinking specifically of potentially red-green and maybe some of the Trustworthy assurance and InfoCard discussions. And again, this is an attempt to address, a number of the suggestions from the last meeting. Now, the one thing that I wanted to bring up, just sort of out of, I don't know, a little bit of self-serving, I suppose, is some of you may already know, but we are doing a second year of the TWC curriculum RFP that we did last year. Last year we did $500,000. We wound up spending $750,000. This year we're spending $750,000 at the start, and we'll probably wind up going up to $1 million with regards if things hold true. What we do is we usually go in on a quarterly basis and find things that have not fired for whatever reason in terms of funding, and then reallocate that towards things like RFPs. So the second year, this is the follow-on from the same thing that we did last year, whereas last year's RFP was focused on broad curricular endeavors. This year it's depth. So we're looking for content that focuses on specific pillars, whether it's security, privacy, reliability, business integrity, the law, ethics, policy angle. And we've also added secure software engineering. The awards this year, again, will be on the order of around $50,000 per. So that's just something that I wanted to toss out to you folks. If you have more questions or thoughts or any of that kind of stuff, I'd be more than happy to do it. To answer those, the one thing that I will say that is a major departure this year versus last year is last year it was basically the regions that Microsoft Research Redmond covered, which is North America, Latin America, and India. This year it's global. So for those gentlemen in Australia, England, and Germany that I basically told to take a flying leap last year, welcome to the club. So so that was one of the things that we argued on, and most of the RFPs this year that are coming from our group are actually global in nature, so there is no geographic problems there. One of the other things that, knowing that we have a tendency to want to try to anchor some of the meetings to events, I wanted to toss out the question on what the next board meeting date should be. Now, TechFest 2006 will be on March 1st and 2nd. That's a Wednesday and a Thursday, and I wanted to sort of get a sense of, A, are we content with keeping it sort of locked to TechFest, or do we want to tweak it a little bit? And B, are there any known problems right off the bat that people have with early March from a meeting perspective?
I like that date.
We
Yeah.
presumably meet on the 2nd and the 3rd.
Either way, I mean, either we can either front load it, or we can, it was like last year. It was basically whichever. Given that we had two options, either front load it or tack it onto the rear. It's whoever had the,
Is this your subtle way of saying we've all been reappointed? Is that how you bring this subject up?
You will note on the miscellaneous items bullet 4, discussion of board membership during final wrap-up.
Final. Okay.
The final, tomorrow's board session.
I like those dates.
Yeah.
Tomorrow afternoon. So, in any case,
You have to be on your best behavior.
that's right, Mr. Patterson.
Laugh at Dave's jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
No, just laugh at Dave. I mean, I'm plenty of comedy by myself without any sort of jokes involved. But assuming, of course, that board membership, at least hypothetically speaking, take a look at the dates. Let me know what you think, and we'll get back to it. Like I said, we'll discuss this in more detail tomorrow. There are going to be some changes. I mean, there are things that we want to deal with. I want to get Steve out of here. I want to get Whitaker. Where's Whitaker? I want him out of here. Oh, there he is. Yeah, I want you gone. No, so there's.
Fix your laptop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there we go. You fix the laptop, you get to stay. No, these are these are some discussions that we've been having internally. There's some discussions that we still want to broach with you folks, and so I think probably tomorrow, instead of front loading it, we want to put it on the rear end of the session here so we can actually
I do want to say
get some
that
work done.
Because we were not tied with the faculty summit, I felt in the end that I had to make a choice. And of course I would do this over the faculty summit. But had they been back to back, I think I probably would have attended the summit as well.
Right, right.
And I kind of miss, even though, you know, there are all these good reasons to
Right.
perhaps not attend.
No, yeah.
So that's why I kind of like having it anchored to Tech Fest.
I do too. Well, there's a value thing too. I mean, it turns into, given the fact that there's Tech Fest or there's Faculty Summit. A number of you have already been to Faculty Summit a number of times. In some cases,
And we can choose not to attend.
yeah, exactly. There's not a whole lot of. There are generally new things to talk about at Faculty Summit, but it's not like Tech Fest where there's always something new being, fed into the system. So it's my understanding, or it's at least my thought here, that probably for the purposes of this board, in many cases, the Tech Fest is of more value.
Yeah.
But again, that's just sort of anecdotal than anything else.
Right. So is there anybody in the room who is opposed to having this thing back to back or in parallel with Tech Fest? Okay.
Perfect.
Let's agree that in March we will. Well, if it's in parallel, you'll have a chance to go to Tech Fest for a couple hours.
Right, like we usually do, where we have at least one day that's blank, and then part of the so the one day that's blank, you wind up going and get all that kind of stuff.
And
The
then-
other thing is that since the board does meet on a regular basis, it's good for us to be planning our schedules a few years in advance and knowing that it'll be anchored to certain dates.
That's
It'll always be
precisely the
first
reason
of
why.
March. Then we'll save that time slot.
Right. Well, the only problem that we run into right now with Tech Fest, and I don't see that there's any sort of way around it at this point, the time difference between this meeting and Tech Fest is actually longer than 6 months by a significant margin. So I mean, it's not an intractable problem, but it's just something to be aware of. But again, it's my sense that Tech Fest is the value add here for most folks. So if that's the case, then I'll go ahead and start working on possibilities for venue and all that kind of stuff for the next Tech Fest meeting or for Tech Fest as the next meeting.
And then what I was going to say is maybe after Microsoft understands better what future faculty summits are going to look like, and we understand better our own feelings, we'll revisit the question about the summer meeting in March.
Well, that's a good point, because there's some discussion that's going on right now with regards to the faculty summit that may make it sort of, instead of the way it is right now, you would probably still have, your kickoff keynotes and your ending keynotes and that kind of stuff, but make it like a series of summer institutes that are all held at the same time. So for those of you that have participated in MSR summer institutes in the past, they're very focused on subject matter areas, whether it's security or graphics or something of that nature. So if you run a bunch of those in parallel, and you involve some of the researchers in coming up with some of the program committee work, deciding what the tracks are, all of that kind of stuff, it becomes much more of a pull rather than what Tech Fest ordinarily or Faculty Summit would ordinarily be. Martine.
I think I disagree a little bit with what you said, Fred, in that for scheduling things for July, I don't think we can wait till March if it comes to that, right? I mean,
Maybe
it's a
so,
little bit
but I
tight,
think
yeah.
we want to hear about what Tech Fest is, what
Faculty
Summit is before we do that.
But maybe we should do that by email.
That's fine. I mean, so if it turned out that Microsoft decided to have a 2-day security institute as part of Tech Fest, as part of Faculty Summit, then I would expect that most of the people in this room would want to be there anyway.
Right.
And then it would be a no-brainer about having our meeting back to back.
Right.
And so, yeah.
They need to.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of stuff internally that we need to, vet it with Rick and Dan and figure out what their feelings are on the matter. To be honest, I think they would probably, they would have no objection to doing essentially a bunch of parallel small summer institute type events and just have sort of capstone event and for, and the boat cruise. Yeah, exactly. Make sure everyone can go out and watch the drunks try to navigate their boats through the locks. Yes, sir.
If we decide, on the other hand, not to directly link the two events summer, the loose coupling we had this year actually suited me very well.
It was close enough to Faculty Summit that it wasn't.
So if we're coming from Europe, it's possible to make one trip to cover both events.
Right.
And actually it's very nice because I had a holiday in between, but it's also work I could do in between as well.
Sure, okay.
Did you get Dave to pay for the intervening days?
No, sadly not. Maybe I didn't try hard enough.
All right. I'm a manager now. I need to make sure those IO codes line up to the correct columns and all of those types of things. So.
Because if you did, then we'd all do that too.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, he got it. Next time, I'll show up in May, and unfortunately, the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord of the Sith said, "I'm sorry, not going to work on this one." So, okay, I think we've pretty much beaten that bulleted item to death. Miscellaneous items. I sort of chatted with a couple of you already this morning. This is sort of going from least important to most important, but what was your thoughts on the Marriott versus the Hyatt?
Marriott.
No contest is an answer. But okay, you like the Marriott better?
No contest which way?
Yeah, exactly. No contest. Yeah.
You like better?
So you like the Marriott?
Marriott's better and Redmond's better. Well, there aren't so many restaurants here.
Well, I mean...
Where's the brew pub?
Is there
there's two of them. I'll hook you up tonight, dude.
There's the workshop directly across the street, but you best bring your fighting clothes for that one.
Where you last
Come on, I sussed that
Amazing
out,
running
man.
path that Peter Swire pointed out, biking and running path.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You can thank me for that. I'm actually on the Parks Commission. I make sure those types of things are well maintained. So there you go. I'll take that.
You live in Redmond?
I live in where?
You live in Redmond?
Yes, I do. Up at the top of the hill.
Have it at the Hyatt then.
Thanks, Dick. Anyway, okay, it was just sort of a straw poll here with regards to...
I can't understand the advantages of the other one.
Well...
the advantage of the Hyatt, from my point of view, is there are
things to do.
many more much better restaurants within walking distance of the hotel. And for those of us who don't leave right after the second day, or arrive in time for dinner the first day, like last night, that's a plus. And there are also some there's a bigger selection of interesting shopping and so on. And I live in Ithaca, and you can figure what
Ithaca's the shopping mecca of New York.
Of certainly
of Ithaca?
within 30 miles of
yeah,
it, sure.
Exactly.
So that's the advantage, and it didn't seem to me that the rooms were that different, and I guess I've been in too many hotel rooms.
Lights off.
Yeah, right.
I mean, from a cost perspective, it's pretty much a wash. The Marriott is slightly more expensive because it's a new hotel. It's for all intents and purposes brand new. But from a convenience standpoint and all that kind of stuff, I just sort of wanted to toss the question out there.
We don't care.
I don't care.
Couldn't care either way.
Yeah, it's not that important.
I thought that the Marriott has a health club in the building, has a running path that's
That's
magnificent,
true.
very close by. And we were out and trying informal restaurants. There's a Good Time, Good Indian restaurant a block away. That's not fancy big dinners, but it was.
If you get there before they close.
Yeah, they closed before 9. Right?
Did you say the Hyatt has a pool?
Yeah.
There's a pool at the Marriott.
The Marriott.
There's a pool and a workout room and a running trail.
Now, the one thing to be aware of, I mean, without in the danger of rat holing here, but there will be a Westin going in directly across the street from the Hyatt here before too long. All that construction that's going on in downtown, there's going to be a Westin and a Sky Bridge across the two. So,
Wow.
There's too many lawyers on that running path anyhow.
Exactly.
Get your bike.
They're not running; they're jogging. Yeah, no.
So we're going to put the privacy part of the committee in the.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
All that being said, it's awesome to run through Bellevue. There's really nice running paths there, and I totally understand
Dodging cars.
about the shopping. So I think that's a good point taken. So whatever, it's really not that important. It's not important.
Shoe department at the Nordstrom. Fred needs to go. Satisfy his urges here. Not a problem.
Let's let Fred do his thing.
Fair enough. In any case, it will be driven by availability, but I just wanted to make sure in the future that, if everyone said, God, don't put me there again, we'll just make sure that we don't do that again. But as long as they're sort of out there, we'll just sort of play it by ear going forward. The 20-minute rule, for those of you that don't recall, let me go ahead and make sure that we understand.
Did you violate it yet?
We have, well, at least in regards to me, I've been, it started early violating me. It was, yeah. In any case, you all know the 20-minute rule. The one piece of that we're asking from the board again is the direction memo. That is to say, when you guys are in closed session, please let us know what you think as a board on what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and that kind of stuff. We're still soliciting the individual feedback, but it's good to have, like we had in the last one, a very clear, concise set of this is good, this ain't so good, and move forward. I mean, you've always sort of done that, but it's, there's always been sort of some juxtaposition on a few issues, but we would like to know something in sort of an official basis. As I discussed a little bit earlier, discussion of board membership during the final wrap-up. We have been having some sporadic discussions around the board membership and things of that nature. The reason why they have been sporadic, this is probably a good time to segue into that, is because one of the leaders of the pack, you may notice, is not around the room here. Scott Charney is not here. Last Thursday, his wife gave birth to a bouncing baby boy, 9 pounds some odd ounces. And so he may be coming into some of the sessions here, but for obvious reasons, he's sort of playing it by ear. And given that Scott has been out and making sure that his wife and family are squared away with the new arrival, it has played a little bit of havoc with regards to being able to sit down and having a knockdown, drag-out discussion on how we're going to move forward with board membership. We do have some ideas. We'll vet them with you, but at this point, yeah, not a whole lot more to say around that. Oh, the other things, you've already got them all already, but yes?
Did you want to tell us about your suggestion about the Japanese person from last time?
That will be, we have not pursued since the Japanese person at this time, simply because
we're going to discuss that.
Yeah, that's the wrap up. I mean, in terms of board membership and things like that, we would talk about regional issues and filling in technology blanks and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that would be tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
With regards to these things, I would just let you know what they are. They're sort of your get in and out without having to sign in, and they're not actually card keys that open the doors and that kind of stuff. But if you show them to the receptionist out front, if you want to go out in front and take a phone call, smoke a cigar, do whatever it is you want to do.
Wave them at the Marines.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No shoot on sight orders with regards to this kind of stuff. So you might want to hang on to these. They're going to be valid from this point forward, unless, of course, some of you get sent to the showers.
Until Wednesday.
Exactly. But in any case, that's what they're there for. You don't have to sit there and worry about any of the folks at the front desks giving you any hard time as long as you're wearing your badge of honor here. Okay, open mic. Any questions, comments, thoughts, anything that I have not covered? Martine.
In previous opening sessions, you sometimes told us about the recent corporate news, what companies you acquired, what patents you licensed, and all that sort of thing. Did anything happen in the last little while? So I saw in the news that there's a bunch of Finch patents that you licensed. Does that matter at all? Or?
We bought Google yesterday. Oh, no, sorry.
No, Google bought you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well,
one of those.
Point taken. That might actually, I mean, there have been some it's my understanding that there have been some targeted acquisitions around the company in different areas. I think there have been a couple in SBTU, but I'm not necessarily privy to the details of those.
You bought Frontbridge recently, right?
Right, I saw that, but rather than... Steve, you got any sort of intel on the Frontbridge purchase?
Essentially what you've read in the paper.
Yeah,
I don't know whether Dan has more. This is Dan Chiappa, General Manager of Windows Security.
He will be the first sacrificial lamb this morning.
Right. So. I know that Dan has any comments about Frontbridge or not.
No, I mean, I don't have any more insight than probably what you have to make either.
Yeah, in many cases it was just sort of like...
And the other thing you've done to bolster our, handle our insecurities is anything that we've done that
made any difference in the last 6 months?
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Okay.
Clearly nothing. No. I mean, there have been a number of you that we've sort of that have been aware either via other Microsoft engagements or consulting actions or what have you. There's always this sort of steady flow of people going in and out. There haven't been any things, in my estimation, in the last, 4 months since we had the last meeting, because remember it was sort of that March thing, so it's been a really short period of time. There hasn't been anything that has really sort of weighed in. Yes?
I mean, we complained about the size of the reused code base in the Longhorn file system last time.
I was coming to that.
Apparently, that reverberated, shall we say.
It did, and actually you did see that piece of email that, as a result of the conversation last time, okay, how much code coverage is taking place, how much churn and all of that kind of stuff. Steve took that marching order and basically went out and beat the bushes, and do you want to sort of recap what the result was?
This is on the legacy code
right.
Coverage. I mean, we're still, Longhorn's still a work in progress, but the major focus, well, there are a bunch of major focuses, but I'd say probably the top priority issue for those of us in the security team, Secure Windows Initiative team, is really to make sure that we have legacy code coverage in Longhorn, and that's I mean, if you think about it, the Windows Server 2003 code base, it was reviewed during the security push in 2002. Telling people review it again is maybe not the most cost-effective way to do that, but we are looking at what we can do from tool-based strategies, both static analysis and particularly fuzz testing, to try to ratchet up our attention to the legacy code there, and that's something that's a super high priority. It's visible to Jim, for example, and it's something that we know we have to get right, basically to get the level of security that we need in Longhorn. If you look at, frankly, if you, and it's public record, although I prefer that you retain it under the NDA because the public hasn't picked up on it yet. If you look at the security record of Windows Server 2003, a very significant fraction of the vulnerability track record is attributable to the legacy code there.
So that's an example of something we said that caused them to do a lot of work, and they look at the world differently.
Yeah, you're looking for stimulus response. You got it. And I expect that as a result of this session, there will probably be a lot of opportunity, given the subject matter involved, to have more feedback into some of the outstanding issues that we're presenting here. So I would expect, between now and the next meeting that you'll see quite a bit more. So, Jeanette, you're looking like you have a question. You sure? Okay. Yeah, I sort of saw the gears turn there a little bit. I was wondering for the
listening and formulating and
right.
withholding.
Fair, yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Scheming.
Yes, yeah. Waiting for the optimal moment to strike. So, so I don't know if that's necessarily an answer to your question, Dave, but it is a answer or an answer here. So, with that, we are pretty much on schedule here. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll take a 15-minute so we can start getting some of the transitions done here. Anything else? Questions, comments, thoughts, complaints? If there's any complaints, tell them to Steve. All right. Thanks. Yes.
I have a question having to do with Jerry Cochran's presentation,
yes.
Trustworthy Assurance. We've heard over the past few meetings many different new approaches to software development in Microsoft with trustworthy computing involved, like Steve Littner saying, John Devon,
Visionary Excellence, right?
Amitabh, and now this. Or is there, are they related?
This is not, this is, okay, so,
You don't have to answer this now,
well,
but.
I mean, you'll see, this is not another assurance process that's an alternative to SDL or engineering excellence or those things. This is really,
this would be considered an adjunct to probably SDL or to it's something that could be, it's my understanding that it's something that could be used in conjunction with SDL but not replace, it's not a...
This is probably more complementary to what Dan's going to talk about in terms of the architecture than it is to SDL.
Fair enough. Okay. And that's, honestly, that's the type of question you need to ask Jerry, too, because that's the type of question that, if he sends us up the line to Bill,
Right.
Bill's going to ask that question as well. Yeah, please do.
But just, I mean, so SDL isn't static, but SDL is the company's policy for security in the product development lifecycle.
One other thing with regard,
and that's I think we've talked to you about that, but that's a bought into policy all the way up to Ballmer and his staff. So we, I mean, there are various other things that are complementary, I guess you would say. Certainly John Devon, pushing broader quality initiatives, software quality initiatives. But, basically we've agreed with them and we have to be much more prescriptive and specific about security because of the environment, the odds, and the penalties for doing it wrong. So, so SDL is just the answer that we've stuck with.
one of the things that if we have the time in the packed schedule over the next couple of days, it might behoove us for, Steve has been working with regards to the folks, the common criteria folks, and there's been some discussion with regards to SDL and how it plays with common criteria.
Yeah, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes and just talk about where we stand on that.
Yeah, and whether it's now or it's later, I don't care. I mean, at some point we got to get Dan up here so he can get his machine up and rolling. But if you want to, we got 15 minutes right now. If we can do it now, or else I can find a slot tomorrow. We can try to figure out, or at some point between today and tomorrow, and figure it out as well. Do you want to try to go ahead and roll it now, or do you want to do it later?
Let's do it now so we can think about it tonight.
Fair enough. All right. Well, then I will go ahead and
ready.
So, let's see, I'll talk about a microphone, that way I'm not let's see, who doesn't know what the common criteria is?
Raise your hand, raise your hand.
Dave, it's all right. Okay, remember the Orange Book?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Orange Book was replaced in the mid-late 90s, after machinations that we don't have enough time to go through, by something called the Common Criteria, which is different in detail and technicalities, but fundamentally the same purpose. You can take any product, whereas the Orange Book was focused on operating systems, and evaluate its security functions, what functions does it have, and evaluate its security assurance according to a set of 7 levels, EAL, Evaluation Assurance Level 1 through 7. We take Common Criteria compliance. The Common Criteria is an international standard. It's an ISO standard. It's bought into by about 20 countries, of which about 6 or 7 countries do evaluations and actually write and update the standard. The Common Criteria compliance is mandatory if you want to sell security products or products with security features into the defense and national security part of the U.S. government. That's something called in STISIP 11, and if you buy me beer tonight, I'll expand in STISIP. So that's what the Common Criteria is. We take our products, Windows, Exchange, SQL Server did an Orange Book. They're ramping up to do Common Criteria again. ISO Server, the firewall product, probably one or two others that I'm forgetting about at the moment. I'm saying things that are not public here, sort of without caution. I'm not paragraph marking my talk, so be cautious what you say. If I may say things that aren't public, and I'll ask you to just treat the whole discussion as under your NDAs. It's not all under your NDAs, but that way I don't have to paragraph mark as I go. We take all our products, we take our products through common criteria. We've gotten burned because SQL got out of date, and that's been a significant obstacle to sales in U.S. government. What we find is that common criteria makes absolutely no difference to the vulnerability rates of products. Okay,
yeah,
so
I heard that was true about the Orange Book too.
Well, Orange Book was actually probably better. You can argue that with Virgil.
Is that NDA what you just said? Is that
common knowledge?
Is it, well,
no.
So that statement is
no, I mean.
You can't quote Microsoft saying that.
Say what can.
Well, I mean that's an interesting summary result.
It makes no difference. I've said in public. Okay, so you can say that and you can quote me. And so a great example. I don't want to be quoted on this, just because it's defaming a competitor. Take SQL Server. We took SQL Server 2000 Service Pack 3 through what we understood then of the SDL process back in the spring of 2002. Okay. Subsequent to that, we've had 3 security bulletins affecting SQL Server 2000 Service Pack 3, which was the vehicle for the release of that security push result. Okay, we didn't have all the process then that we do now. By comparison, Oracle, which has evaluated lots and lots of their products and makes big marketing hay out of their evaluated status, I mean, they did like 46 security bulletins, 2 weeks ago. I mean, they've just been getting hammered. Part of that is because of a sort of a blood in the water phenomenon. We have made it harder to attack SQL Server. It's probably, initially it was probably somewhat easier to attack Oracle. All the researchers are circling around Oracle, find stuff, find more stuff, find more stuff. I think we're better than Oracle, but we're not that much. I don't think we're perfect. We're a lot better. So that's common criteria. Oracle evaluates everything versus SDL. I've been giving this speech.
But so actually Oracle does use the common.
Oh yeah, everything they do is evaluated. Okay. Yeah.
But it's a sales issue, right?
Getting evaluated. I mean, we have to do it. Yeah. Yeah. So what I've been doing is basically, giving a more organized and polite version of the speech I just gave in some of the common criteria and government-related forums around the world in an attempt to start a dialogue with the common criteria authorities. And we have actually succeeded at varying levels with several governments, including the U.S., in getting a discussion started about what one might do to, quote, reform common criteria or reform evaluation processes to reflect things like the SDL that actually make a difference to security in terms of vulnerability rate. Common criteria does give government customers a way to mandate security feature requirements. From that perspective, they find it useful. We want access control lists, we want auditing, we want to shut down if the audit trail fills up. All those things are stuff that SDL is silent on. Common criteria lets them articulate those requirements, so I think they find that handy. But common criteria is fundamentally beyond that. The way we do common criteria, you build a product and then you hire a contractor, and the contractor takes the product in source code and whatever specifications you have and builds the documentation that common criteria says you ought to have produced in the process of building the product, okay? And then that documentation gets turned over to another contractor, to the evaluator. It evaluates it against the requirements and common criteria, and eventually says to NSA or BSI or CESG, we like it or we don't, and you get a certificate. With SDL, of course, the things we do are part of the process. So what we're trying to do at this point is to work with a couple of governments to put together ideas about how you might evaluate that SDL had been applied, and whether the contents of SDL were being maintained reasonably, because of course we change it every 6 months, and getting reasonably good encouragement and cooperation in terms of getting an effort started. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get some government traction. Getting the common criteria changed, it's 8 governments. They're probably on a 3-year cycle, and so actually getting something into the common criteria is a long-term project. But I'm at least hopeful in the short term that we'll start to make some progress. The fact that I'm as hopeful as I am, again, is under your NDA.
So wait, the various people who have written and talked about the common criteria have argued that the whole thing is completely misguided because it impedes progress and because there are no good ways to evaluate it and there's no evidence that it pays off and so on. And I don't want to rehearse those arguments and I don't want to have that discussion. But implicit in what you're saying is that you're not going to try to follow that path, that this is something that's out of the gate and you're just going to try to torque it in a way that...
Say your question again, Fred. I'm not sure.
Why aren't you trying to demolish common criteria, period?
Because we think I guess 2 reasons. One, I think politically, there's too much momentum. Okay. 2, we're not opposed to an objective standard if it measured something. Okay. If there were.
Great. And you believe there can be an objective standard that can be measured?
A more or less objective standard that can say something. Okay. The way NSA evaluates cryptos, as I understand it, is to put really smart people who've, evaluated a lot of cryptos before on the problem of looking at this new crypto for a maybe arbitrarily long time. It's not bounded, and if they find stuff, then they try to figure out what the lessons learned are. So that's not exactly an objective standard. Part of the problem with Common Criteria and Orange Book is that, there's a little of that mindset in the NSA evaluation process. But, we think that, processes help, the sorts of things like fuzz testing and static analysis and threat modeling, do help. And if you apply those reasonably and diligently, you have a process to feed back your lessons learned, as vulnerabilities are discovered, then you can get to a reasonable level. As you know, Fred, I actually built an A1 system, when I was at DEC. I did that essentially by following the guidelines in the Orange Book, which I helped to write, and that was a perfectly fine process. The only thing wrong with it was that it was a build from scratch, build with security as an overriding goal, basically unconstrained as to schedule or budget, and if you decide to do things that way, then it's a legitimate way to get that high goal if that's your goal. The place where Common Criteria really falls apart is with commercial off-the-shelf or COTS software, where you're trying to, basically, little slander, trying to build something useful, trying to build something that gets to market in a reasonable time, trying to build something that's functionally rich, trying to build something that's compatible with past systems. those are the places where common criteria just doesn't have a model, and that's where we think SDL is strong.
So, if I may add, I think that one of the fundamental problems with the common criteria is that it bundled assurances that mattered with assurances that surely make no difference in this set of levels. And to do something that matters, you pay too heavy a price according to the common criteria. So nobody does things that matter because they go to EL4 and EL5, where basically what you do is a lot of documentation, a lot of features, but not a lot of important assurance.
Yeah, the overwhelming component of common criteria at EAL4 is writing documentation after the fact that the evaluators will read.
So I think that either this is a rat hole or it's a great discussion, but it's not a discussion that happens in 15 minutes.
No.
The common criteria issue. And you should think if it's worthwhile to have a real session and have the board push back. And there are really two planes. One is a corporate strategy plane, and the other is an academic technical content plane. And I mean, if we have the discussion, we have to be mindful that having an academic content discussion is probably not so interesting, and it may not be consistent with a strategy discussion. But you may find you want to have both. But in any event, I don't think we could have a really good discussion in a short time.
So either you're bored out of your minds or your appetites are whetted. If we decide to follow up on this, I'm going to continue to working these issues anyway. If we decide to follow up on this, let's do it at the next meeting, and we'll have more to say.
A real reason presentation and have.
But just a small. If those are two planes, I'd suggest a third plane, which is what's good for the United States or for all the governments is a sort of broad public policy as part of it, not just Microsoft maximizing corporate strategy or what's academically interesting, but sort of what's the right thing to do for society, because how Microsoft works here, that becomes a big initiative, will have an effect on that.
Yeah, the academic things often devolve into arguments about public policy also, but it's good to make explicit that we have that.
Having an overall good system for these important things.
Thank you. You have 30 seconds to get some coffee, and Dan puts the mic on.
All right.